I knew something felt wrong the moment Felicia from Human Resources knocked on my glass door with the kind of nervous smile people use when they know they are delivering a disaster. She leaned in, hugged a clipboard to her chest, and whispered, "Hey, you forgot to initial the updated confidentiality form." I did not forget anything. Ever. Forgetting was what other people did. I was the reason Brimstone Dynamics ran like a controlled flame instead of a wildfire in a cardboard factory. Still, I initialed the form and handed it back. Then I returned to the three monitors glowing in front of me like anxious little moons. The Grimwell acquisition review was due in 72 hours. A modest $380 million deal that the company kept announcing in every internal memo like it was a spiritual awakening. No one understood the deal. That was fine. They did not need to. They had me. For 15 years, I had been the silent gear behind Brimstone Dynamics. Not flashy, not loud, not a ping-pong table evangelist, or one of those self-appointed innovation prophets pacing around with buzzword notebooks. I was the architect of the company's compliance spine. I was the one who ensured the Grimwell deal met federal standards, state standards, interdepartmental standards, and sanity standards. I was the only one certified to manage Grimwell's antique data systems and merge them with our own disastrous tech stack that 5 chief technology officers had stitched together like a digital Frankenstein. My name, Rena Caldwell, rested neatly in the liaison line on every official document. Lead certification witness, neutral third party, integration authority. A position no one else wanted, no one else trained for, and no one else even knew how to begin filling. Brimstone had given me that power 15 years ago, then promptly forgot that fact. I did not mind. Invisibility is freedom. When no one watches you, no one limits you. And while the loud people battled for attention, I built bridges strong enough to hold all their weight. Then, approximately 8 minutes after I finished reviewing a particularly stubborn cross-compliance clause, the company's new chief operating officer arrived like a storm wearing a designer suit. Marcus Hale, mid-40s, shark eyes, smiled too wide, spoke too fast, glided into rooms like he believed the floor should thank him for being stepped on. He introduced himself at the morning all-hands meeting with the kind of energy usually reserved for televangelists and snake oil merchants. He called himself a strategist. He called himself a reformer. He said Brimstone Dynamics needed new blood, new vision, new execution. The room applauded like he had descended from a business-themed cloud. I sipped my stale coffee and opened another compliance file. 3 hours after that meeting, Felicia knocked again. This time she did not smile. She did not bring paper. She brought 2 other people, both from HR, both wearing faces that screamed legal approved this. "Rena, can we speak in private?" Always a bad sign. They ushered me into a small room that smelled like carpet glue and fear. No small talk, no water. Just a manila envelope slid across the table as if I were contagious. A termination notice. A script about shifting organizational needs. A sentence declaring my role redundant. Redundant. As if 15 years of architecture, certification, and emergency system rescues could be filed under optional. The woman with the clipboard cleared her throat. "We will need your badge and your laptop by 3 o'clock. The man beside her added, "Security has been informed." I did not argue. I did not panic. I stood, opened the door, and froze. At the reception desk was a printed photo of my face. Someone had scribbled across it in thick red marker. "Do not grant entry. Not my name, not my position. Just that." A threat disguised as protocol. I walked back to my office in silence, packed my things into a cardboard box like a cliché from a sitcom written by someone who hates office workers. My pulse was steady. My palms were cold. Everyone around me avoided eye contact as if failure could be transmitted by eye contact. I placed my badge on the desk. I placed my laptop beside it. Then I walked to the parking lot, sat in my faded sedan, and unlocked my secure vault on my phone. One tap. One entry deleted. Not a file. Not a password. A certification key. the exact digital signature required to validate every single Grimwell integration handshake. Without it, the acquisition could not legally proceed. Not a delay, a dead end. I placed the phone face down on the passenger seat and drove away with the calm of someone who had just removed a single screw from a very large machine. They believed they had eliminated a problem. They did not understand that I had been the foundation, and now the structure they built would collapse under its own arrogance. When I arrived home that evening, I did not bother turning on the lights. I stood in the entryway with the box of my office belongings in my arms, staring into the dim quiet of my living room like I had stepped into another person's life. No Slack pings, no midnight emails, no frantic requests disguised as compliments. Just silence. I set the box on the table and sifted through it. A mug that read, Certified Overthinker. 2 notebooks filled with compliance diagrams and messy sketches only I could decipher. A stack of pens. A small succulent that I watered too often. Everything felt like artifacts from a museum dedicated to the most efficient fool in corporate America. After a long minute of nothing, I walked to the hallway closet. Behind a pile of old scarves and one broken humidifier was a fireproof document box I had labeled with a single word: contingency. I pulled it onto the dining table, opened the latches, and flipped through labeled folders. Audits, protocols, system architecture diagrams, cross-agency correspondence, and finally, the one I was looking for: Grimwell Acquisition, Liaison Requirements. I opened the folder. My name was printed on every page: Certified Neutral Witness, Third-Party Integration Authority, Clearance Gatekeeper, a position with its own federal registry entry and a multi-step certification chain that could not be swapped out like a spare light bulb. The final page was the real jewel. Clause 7F. Termination of the named liaison without substitution and legal recertification voids compliance status, suspends the integration handshake, and halts transaction authorization indefinitely. Plain English: fire Rena Caldwell, and the Grimwell deal collapses. They had not read it. They had not asked about it. They had not even imagined a world in which the quiet woman in the compliance corner mattered. That was their first mistake. Their second mistake was thinking I would lie down and take it. I closed the folder, pushed it aside, and opened my personal laptop. The one Brimstone Dynamics did not own. The one with the encrypted backups of everything I had ever touched. I loaded an old registry window and checked the key I had deleted in the parking lot. The deletion had propagated. Irrevocable. Irreplaceable. For 15 years, I had held that signature. The company had handed it to me and promptly forgotten. Now they would finally understand its weight. For a few minutes, I just sat there in silence, absorbing the shift in my life, like the air pressure after a storm. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered, because why not? Hello, is this Ms. Caldwell? Yes. This is Darius from Grimwell Corporate Compliance. I wanted to verify whether you have submitted your final sign-off. We expected documentation today. I leaned back in my chair. I am no longer employed at Brimstone Dynamics, I said calmly. They terminated me this afternoon. Silence. Then frantic paper shuffling. Then the distinct sound of a man discovering a trap door beneath his feet. Excuse me. What? You are the listed liaison. Your certification is required for the authorization sequence. Yes, I said. I am aware. A longer silence this time, one filled with dawning horror. Ms. Caldwell, he said carefully, without you, we cannot legally proceed with the acquisition. There is no authorized substitute. That seems correct. He inhaled sharply. We will need formal notice from you or your legal representative. You will have it shortly. I hung up. Not dramatic, not angry, simply done. Next, I called Daniel, my lawyer. Sharp, calm, fond of saying litigation is just chess with paperwork. He read my termination letter twice and muttered, "This is idiocy of the highest order. They fired the only person who can complete the deal. They did not replace you. They did not even request a conditional handoff." "Yes," I answered. "They made several errors today." He exhaled in that very specific way lawyers do when they sense their client is about to acquire leverage large enough to tilt a building. "I will draft the statement," he said. "Grimwell will receive the formal notice tonight." When I hung up, I sat at the table again, breathing in the strange quiet of a life suddenly unshackled. They had taken my job. They had taken my office. They had taken my badge and my login and the respect they never truly gave me. But while they were celebrating their new era of strategic brilliance, I had taken their future. Tomorrow morning, the panic would begin, and I would be watching. The panic began sooner than I expected. By 8:40 the next morning, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from an unfamiliar office number. I did not answer. I ate my cereal slowly, deliberately, as if I were watching a sunrise rather than the inevitable unraveling of a corporation. When I finally listened to the message, I heard the unsettled voice of Brimstone Dynamics' chief financial officer, a man who usually sounded like a confident calculator with a necktie. "Rena, hello. We have encountered a small administrative delay with the Grimwell authorization, and I wanted to verify a few items with you. If you could return my call at your earliest convenience, that would be very helpful." His tone was the vocal equivalent of sweating. I deleted the message. By 9:15, Grimwell had already frozen the acquisition queue. I knew because Daniel forwarded me the automated notice with a quiet, almost amused, "Well, that escalated quickly." It had. By 9:27, Grimwell sent an internal inquiry to Brimstone asking why their listed liaison had been terminated without substitution. That message circulated like a viral infection. At 9:34, a junior analyst apparently located a forgotten copy of the acquisition binder on the company's shared drive. He read Clause 7F, did not blink, and launched into the hallway babbling about a compliance impossibility. Someone shushed him. Someone else asked if he was joking. Someone in legal grabbed the binder and ran. By 9:50, word had reached Marcus Hale on the executive floor. I pictured his face. I pictured the moment when his confidence cracked and his brain scrambled to rewrite the last 24 hours. I also pictured him performing the traditional executive ritual of pacing in tiny circles while blaming everyone except himself. My phone rang again. I let it go to voicemail. This time the CFO did not bother hiding the panic. "Rena, we need to talk. Grimwell has paused the process. They are saying the acquisition cannot proceed without your certification. There must be a way to resolve this. Please return my call." Resolve in corporate language always meant the same thing. Someone else needed to clean up the mess. But I was not someone else anymore. I spent the late morning reviewing the folders in my contingency box. Not with urgency. With the calm of a librarian curating an archive. Every document mattered now. Every certification. Every correspondence. Every timestamp. Brimstone had cut the wrong wire, and now they were trying to pretend the sparks were decorative. At noon, my former assistant, a sweet 20-something named Lyle, sent me a text filled with pure confusion. "Everyone is running around shouting about a clause. I think you broke the entire company." I responded with 2 words. "Be observant." He sent back a nervous emoji. At 1 o'clock, Brimstone held an emergency leadership meeting. Not a scheduled one, not a controlled one, a frantic, chaotic one with raised voices and clashing egos, and an investor observing with the frozen expression of a man planning several firings. The internal details leaked quickly. Someone sent Lyle a picture of a slide projected on the conference room wall. Clause 7F. Termination without substitution voids the deal. The slide was pixelated. The room was silent. Several executives were visibly sweating. Marcus reportedly tried to wave away the issue as a simple administrative oversight. Legal corrected him. The liaison certification process required months, federal clearance, 2 rounds of third-party verification, a background check, and specific training not offered outside of government channels. Even if they begged, bribed, or bullied someone, no candidate would be certified in time. The deal was dead, and the board was beginning to understand why. At 2:16, my doorbell rang. I ignored it. The camera feed showed a man in a suit, holding a friendly envelope with a desperate posture. He knocked again, glanced at the camera, then placed the envelope delicately between my screen door and the frame. When he left, I waited 10 minutes before stepping out to retrieve it. The envelope contained an apology letter signed by Marcus Hale. The words were clearly written by legal, printed on expensive paper to disguise the panic. Miss Caldwell, we regret the abrupt decision regarding your employment and acknowledge your indispensable expertise in the Grimwell acquisition process. We are prepared to offer immediate reinstatement with a substantial compensation increase. We hope to resolve this misunderstanding. I placed the letter back in the envelope. I walked it straight to the recycling bin and dropped it in without ceremony. By late afternoon, Brimstone was in full meltdown. The IT department attempted to reconstruct parts of my certification footprint, but they could not validate anything. My key was gone, deleted from the registry. Forging it would be a felony. Replacing it would be impossible without federal approval and months of training. The acquisition had been built on a bridge only I could maintain, and they had taken a sledgehammer to the foundation. At 6:30, Lyle texted again. Marcus looks sick. Legal is shouting. Someone said the word catastrophic 4 times. Are you doing all right? I answered honestly. Yes, very all right. Because this was not revenge. This was gravity. They had stepped off a cliff. I simply moved the safety net. By Friday morning, Brimstone Dynamics no longer looked like a functioning corporation. It looked like an overturned beehive. Emails leaked. Slack threads circulated. Rumors traveled faster than facts, and the facts traveled at the speed of panic. At 9:42, a financial blog posted the first public hint. The headline read, Major Midwest Tech Firm Faces Internal Compliance Breakdown During Acquisition. No names were listed, but the description was unmistakable. A mid-sized Ohio-based software integration company, a halted acquisition, a critical certification lapse. It was Brimstone. Everyone knew. By 10:15, Marcus stood in the executive suite with a binder under his arm and a face that carried more sweat than blood. Staff said he kept whispering the same phrase over and over. We can fix it. He was wrong. He had been wrong from the beginning. At 11 o'clock, an investor named Gloria Redwood arrived unannounced. Gloria was famous for 2 things: turning failing companies into skeleton crews and never raising her voice. She did not need volume. Her presence alone could silence a riot. She requested documents politely. She reviewed them methodically. And then she asked for one thing: the termination paperwork for Ms. Rena Caldwell. According to Lyle, who overheard the conversation from the hallway, no one wanted to hand it over. The HR director stalled. The chief financial officer stammered. The general counsel looked like he was calculating whether perjury was a viable career move. But Gloria Redwood waited, and no one could outwait her. Finally, the folder was produced. She flipped through it without looking up. She read the timestamp. She read the sign-off. She read the line that declared my position redundant. She closed the folder with slow precision and said one sentence: You have terminated the wrong person. Meanwhile, I was at home, sitting comfortably in sweatpants, watching my plants enjoy the sunlight. I was reviewing the website mock-up for my new consulting firm. Quiet Ladder Consulting. A small operation. Sleek. Independent. Mine. At 12:30, my phone buzzed again. This time I answered because the entertainment value outweighed the inconvenience. The CFO's voice shook like loose metal. Rena, we are officially asking you to reconsider our earlier offer. Brimstone Dynamics deeply values your expertise. We are prepared to negotiate fairly. If you could return to complete the final certification for Grimwell, we can compensate you very generously. How generously? I asked mildly. A pause. He was not prepared for that question. We are open to discussions, he said finally. We simply need the completion of the sign-off. It is a matter of urgency. Your urgency, I replied, is not my priority. He exhaled shakily. If Brimstone loses this acquisition, there will be job losses, severe losses. Entire departments may collapse. That is unfortunate, I said. Perhaps you should not have terminated the person who held your compliance infrastructure together. We did not know, he insisted. We did not understand the depth of your involvement. That is accurate, I said. You did not understand. His voice cracked. Rena, please. I am no longer an employee, I said. If you wish to engage me for professional services, you may contact Quiet Ladder Consulting. All inquiries must be sent by formal request. Rates are listed on the website. There was a tiny moment where he tried to decide whether to yell or plead. His voice landed somewhere between the two. This is absurd. You cannot hold an entire company hostage over one oversight. I am not holding anyone hostage, I said. I am simply no longer preventing the natural consequences of your decisions. I ended the call. By 3 o'clock, the internal meeting headlines had grown more desperate. Urgent. Legal review needs Rena Caldwell certification and request for liaison. Substitution declined by Grimwell and executive directive. Find a workaround. There was no workaround. Clause 7F was absolute. They would have to begin the entire acquisition from the ground up with a new liaison. That process took 12 months on a good day and 18 months if even one agency flagged a discrepancy. The Grimwell deal was not stalled. It was buried. At 5:30, my doorbell rang again. The porch camera showed Marcus himself, wearing a suit that looked as though it had lost an argument with gravity. His tie was crooked, his posture was wilted. He held a briefcase like a peace offering. I did not open the door. He knocked again. Miss Caldwell, he said, raising his voice. Please, we are willing to adjust everything. Title, salary, department authority. We can bring you back into leadership. We can fix this. I stood in the entryway, hidden from view, listening to the desperation in the man who had fired me without speaking to me once. We are prepared to make you head of integration, he said, louder now. We can reinstate your team. We can increase your compensation package. You will have complete autonomy. Please, let us discuss solutions. I let him talk until he ran out of incentives. Then I spoke through the closed door. You have nothing I want. There was a long silence. When he finally left, his steps sounded like defeat. Inside, the air felt lighter, calmer, as if a weight I had carried for 15 years had evaporated. This was no longer about revenge. This was about recognition. And soon, they would recognize everything. The collapse arrived quietly at first, like a hairline crack in a dam. Then it widened. Then it roared. On Monday morning at 7:13, a public update from Grimwell hit the business wires. 4 sentences. Precise, surgical. Due to unresolved compliance discrepancies and the termination of the named liaison without certified substitution, Grimwell Holdings is suspending all acquisition activity with Brimstone Dynamics. We extend professional courtesy to all parties involved and will reassess at a later date. Translation: the deal is dead. By 8 o'clock, Brimstone's stock dropped 17%. By 8:15, it had dropped further. Phones rang across the building like alarms in a burning village. The executive suite locked itself in a conference room. Someone emailed Lyle asking if he knew any way to contact me anonymously. He sent me a screenshot with a single caption. This is hilarious and horrifying. At 9:30, the internal investor call leaked. A junior accountant recorded the audio from her laptop and sent it to her sister, who sent it to her boyfriend, who posted it to a forum where anonymous whistleblowers gathered like ravens. The call was a disaster. The lead investor demanded to know who authorized my termination. The CFO tried to blame HR. HR tried to blame Marcus. Marcus tried to blame the prior leadership. The general counsel stated bluntly, "We violated the protocol by removing the only certified liaison." Someone else muttered, "We fired the bridge." Then there was silence. At 10:22, another clip leaked. It was not from the call. It was from Brimstone's own security archive. A still photo of my face taped to the front desk with red marker scrawled across it. "Do not grant entry." It appeared on LinkedIn with the caption, "This is how Brimstone Dynamics treats 15-year veterans." The post went viral within hours. Other former employees chimed in with their own stories of burned bridges and carelessness. Grimwell's chief compliance officer quietly liked the post. By noon, the narrative had shifted from corporate embarrassment to corporate cautionary tale. Meanwhile, I was at home watering my plants. Quiet ladder. Consulting had already received 2 inquiries, one from a cyber defense startup, another from a logistics firm that had lost its last compliance engineer to burnout. I reviewed their requests, checked their documentation, and sipped my tea like a person who finally understood the concept of control. At 1 o'clock, Daniel called. "Rena," he said, "Brimstone sent another offer, a larger one, considerably larger. They want a meeting." "No," I answered. "Not interested." "I assumed that would be the answer," he said with a faint laugh. "In that case, the next step is simple. You hold your ground and continue accepting external clients. You owe Brimstone nothing." "Oh," I repeated with a dry smile. "An interesting word." By 2:30, the board released a terse internal statement announcing an immediate restructuring of operations. It used words like recalibration, unintended consequences, and transitional leadership. None of it mattered. Everyone knew it meant the same thing. The company had broken itself. At 4:10, a courier arrived with a small velvet box, sealed with embossed gold. No sender label, just a minimalist crest I recognized from Grimwell's executive wing. Inside the box lay a folded note in elegant handwriting. "Precision is underrated. Thank you for the clarity. R.M. Chief Executive Officer, Grimwell Holdings. No demands, no offers, no pressure, just acknowledgement, the kind that actually meant something." I placed the box on my bookshelf beside the first quiet ladder binder, a new chapter for a life I had built out of ash and structure. At 5:30, my phone vibrated with one last message from Lyle. "Executives are arguing again. People are leaving early. Someone keeps saying your name like it is a ghost story. I hope you are okay." I typed a reply that felt honest. Better than okay. As dusk settled, I changed into comfortable clothes, opened my laptop, and checked the new client inquiries again. The world beyond Brimstone Dynamics was bigger than I had allowed myself to believe. Cleaner. Saner. There were companies that valued structure. There were companies that valued steady hands. There were companies that did not treat their foundations like disposable parts. Quiet ladder consulting would thrive. I could feel it. Another email arrived. Subject: respectfully requesting your terms. From an address that belonged to Brimstone Dynamics. I closed the email without reading further. No more begging, no more demands, no more negotiations from people who learned too late that their entire structure had depended on a quiet woman they dismissed without a second thought. I took one more look at the velvet box on the shelf. It was small, elegant. A reminder that not every collapse is a tragedy. Some collapses are revelations, some collapses are freedom, and some collapses are nothing more than the moment the world finally realizes who built the bridge in the first place. I sat back in my chair, let the evening light spill across the room, and whispered to myself, not as revenge, but as fact. I am the terms.